Welcome to the Talks at Google podcast, where great minds meet. I'm Celicia, bringing you this Flashback Friday episode. Talks at Google brings the world's most influential thinkers, creators, makers, and doers all to one place. Every episode is taken from a video that can be seen at youtube.com/talksatgoogle. This event was originally released on our channel on May 22nd, 2012. After a successful career at Microsoft as a software engineer, Patrick Awa looked back to his native Ghana and decided that the ills of the country could only be solved by educating the next generation of business and government leaders, providing them with training in critical thinking and ethics that the current generation lacked. To put his plan into action, he founded e17 University in Accra, West Africa's first liberal arts school. Now, in its 19th year, e17 empowers young Africans to develop the motivation and the skills they need to create their own solutions to Africa's challenges. e17 students are known worldwide for applying their computer science and business skills in innovative ways to address local challenges. Nearly all e17 graduates have chosen to stay in Africa, over 95%, where they are known for ethical integrity and for their innovative and entrepreneurial talents. From May 22nd, 2012, here is Patrick Awa, Innovation for Change in Africa.
Thank you very much, Pablo. So what I thought I would do this afternoon is just tell you the story of e17, of why it's here, of what it is today, and what it is going to become in the future as we plan the future of this institution. So e17, as you can see on the slides, on this first slide, is really about a new Africa. And so when I left Microsoft to start on the journey to build this university, I wasn't actually thinking about just the fact of building a university. What I was really concerned about was contributing towards a renaissance on a continent. And what I was thinking about was the future happiness of an entire people. This is what I set out to do. And the question is, why start a university? So imagine that you are just a guy or a gal, say at Google or Microsoft, and you want to change the future of a continent. And you don't have the financial resources personally of Bill or Larry or people like that, but you want to change a continent. What do you do? Where do you begin? For me, it was trying to figure out, is there some catalytic thing that I could do that would, in the long run, very long term, achieve the results that I wanted, that I sought. And I did a simple exercise at some point with friends and family in Ghana, where we would look at different problems, any problem. Healthcare, infrastructure, governance, education, you name it, and ask, why is this the way it is? And we would get a set of answers for each of those problems. But then take each of those answers and ask why, and try to drill down to figure out, is there something that seems to be fundamental across all these problems? And as we did this exercise, one thing stood out, and that thing was leadership. Leadership is defined by all the people in positions of influence, the decision makers, and what they were doing. Whether it was making the wrong decisions, or just accepting the status quo as it was, or even being corrupt. And this was a very strong signal. Right? So I started to ask the question about how leaders are created. And that took me to take a second look at education, from primary school through graduate school. Well, what I found was, and again, higher ed sort of made a big signal for a couple of reasons. One is I visited university campuses where the classes were huge. You'd see hundreds of students, even over 1,000 students in a classroom with one professor. And the classroom was physically not big enough. So students would be standing outside on the verandas, looking through windows for lectures. I spoke with some of my own colleagues who studied computing in college, and whose education in computer science involved writing code on paper, not actually running anything through a compiler, or testing code, and getting graded on paper. And so this was one thing I saw. It was very troubling. The second thing was data that was telling me that only at the time, about 2%, and it's still about 5% today, but back then about 2% of college-age kids, 18 to say 24-year-olds, were in college in Ghana. And the problem with 2 to 5% is it's too small, but also, by definition, the people in college across sub-Saharan Africa will run their countries one day, by definition. If you're in college, if you're among the 2%, or today the 5%, you will be the ones they would be the ones running the courts, running the schools, setting health policy, building infrastructure, etc. So now, for an individual thinking of what to do with limited resources, it seemed like, okay, if I could address this 2% problem, this 5% problem, I could achieve catalytic impact long term. Because if I could change the way these leaders are educated, then there will be a sea change in Ghana. And if we could do it across sub-Saharan Africa, imagine a continent transformed. So this is how I got to decide what to do, to think of developing ethical leaders who have the ability to innovate, to be creative, to not accept the status quo as it is. And so I quit Microsoft, and I got scared. So seemed every other day or so I would wake up and wonder, what am I doing? And then I saw these words. So I typed them up and I put them on my mirror. And I'd read them every day. Every day. So the day I realized actually that I was committed, I said, wow, this is the beginning. And that's why e17afd6de is called what it's called, the beginning. So we've come a long way in 10 years. This is a picture of our campus, our permanent campus, when it was under construction. We have 500 students. We started with 30 in 2002. We've deployed world-class technology. So kids who study computer science not only design code, but they actually run code and have a real experience. We have 370 graduates, 100% job placement within 6 months of our graduating classes, a beautiful campus, and increasing global recognition. So this is sort of an amazing thing to be a part of. But you know what amazing is, right? Google is amazing. And at the heart of it is liberal arts core curriculum. When I came to the United States for undergraduate education at Swarthmore, I experienced an education unlike anything I had seen up until that until that time. Professors who wanted me to think. Professors who wanted me to tell them what I thought. Who wanted me to be analytical, both in a qualitative and a quantitative way. And who wanted me to have a breadth of vision. And they demanded this of all the students who went there. And so an education that was the exact opposite of the rote learning that I had been through up until that point. And so we've implemented that at e17afd6de, this sort of mix of the liberal arts with computer science, business administration, and MIS. That's what we've done in our first 10 years. And the results are staggering. This is data from a study that was done by a team of MBA students from Berkeley. They came to Ghana and they went around corporate Ghana, asking, how would you rank university graduates in this country? And e17afd6de stands out. And we think that it's really because of our incredible focus on the liberal arts core, our focus on teaching people, young people, to have integrity and to care about what they do and about their impact wherever they are. 95% of our graduates stay in Africa. As I told you, they all get jobs. Most of them are in Africa, which is great. The 5% that are not in Africa are typically pursuing graduate education in the United Kingdom or the United States. So we proved our educational model. We built a permanent campus. The question is, where do we go from here? We're going to continue to do all the things that we're doing. Classrooms that encourage conversation and discussion, interaction between students and faculty, and students interacting with each other and debating with each other. Spaces that inspire people, that invite people to gather, and to really ask this question, what is the good society? What should it look like on this continent? And how do we achieve it? What is our role in achieving it? We have a requirement for community service at e17afd6de. So it's this sort of balance between saying we really want ethics and civic engagement to be central to what we do, but it's something we can't force. So we say, well, you've got to do it before you graduate, but we set just a small amount of hours required and hope that students will do more. And they all do more. In 2008, an amazing event occurred on campus where a student body in Ghana decided to adopt a student-run honor system and to come to the faculty and say, we will not cheat in exams, we will not tolerate those who do. And the reason ultimately they decided to do this is because if you think about it, cheating in exams in a classroom is what corruption looks like when you're 20 years old. And if you have an institution that tolerates that, you're building or you're nurturing future corrupt leaders. If you have an institution that does not tolerate that, then you're developing future leaders that you can trust with the central bank, who you can trust with the lives of people and infrastructure that those people will live and work in. And so this was an amazing event. We stepped out of the classrooms for exams. We don't proctor exams, and students hold themselves to this rule. Now, of course, unfortunately, we always have a few students who do try to cheat in exams, and fortunately, their peers hold them accountable. They're brought before a judicial committee that includes students, and they are held accountable. And to see this happening and the interest that it has generated not only within our campus, but outside our campus, as the accreditation board has initially been very skeptical about it, as corporate leaders have spoken out in favor of it, as high school students are so fascinated by this thing that when we go talk with them about e17, this is the thing they most want to talk about this society, this community that has decided that it will no longer tolerate corruption among its ranks. So what next? We call it Vision 2020, and I'll run quickly through it. And again, the process for getting to what we do, what we're going to do. As we set about thinking about the next 10 years of e17, we asked ourselves, there's so many things that we could be doing. How do we decide which ones to do and which ones to not do, which ones to postpone, right? And we decided, well, let's go back to our mission statement. And our mission statement is to educate a new generation of ethical, entrepreneurial leaders in Africa. And we asked, for what? The answer is what I started with: to drive a renaissance on the continent, to change a continent for the next generation. And in order to do that, we realized we needed to be educating people for industry and for government. And so we set about, starting from where we are today, figuring out what are the things that we need to do to educate leaders for industry and government. And we have three broad areas that we're going to address. First of all, we're going to strengthen our base, which is the people in our community. We're going to focus on diversity and excellence. Our mission statement talks about Africa, not Ghana, Africa. So this will become a more Pan-African institution. We will grow from current 10% of our student body being from outside Ghana to between 30 and 50% being from outside Ghana in the next 10 years. We will maintain gender balance. We have achieved it. We have approximately 50% of our students are women. We will provide more scholarships so that we continue to increase economic diversity within our ranks. We will create facilities to strengthen campus culture. So more housing so that more people from diverse backgrounds live and learn together. You look at a place like Ghana, it's a country the size of the state of Oregon. There are over 50 different languages spoken there. There are Christians, Muslims, and many other religions in this country. If you look at Africa, the diversity is even greater. And it is very important that these young people live and learn together. Because we have committed to that, and because we have committed to engaging in a conversation, in 2006, e17 students elected a woman as head of student government for the first time in Ghana's history. And within 2 years after that, 3 other universities had done the same thing. This is the sea change that we talk about, setting an example that changes an entire country and what it believes to be possible. We're going to develop a fund specifically to attract and hire Africans in the diaspora to return home. We found that there are many people who want to come back home, who have student loans they have to pay off, and therefore need to be on a US salary scale in order to do that. But if we can have funding to just take care of those loans, then they can return home and be on a local salary scale and make their contribution to their continent. So this is going to be another thing that we focus on. The next thing is to broaden our impact. Now, for this, we've decided on three areas that we're going to tackle. The first is engineering and applied sciences. Computer science and MIS we're already doing, fit into that. But we're going to get into electrical engineering, computer engineering, mechanical engineering. And we took the time to go talk with, companies in telecommunications, in the oil and gas industry, and also in light manufacturing to guide what we do. And so these are the majors that we're going to do next. These will be leaders for industry. But actually, the systems design mind will be incredibly helpful in government as well. And the engineering program will have not only strengthened systems and design thinking, but also in entrepreneurial thinking. The second area is management and economics. So to add economics to the business degree, and to learn from the examples of Latin America, where a few countries developed such strong undergraduate programs in economics that their top graduates came to the United States for their PhDs, so the best PhD programs here. They've returned to their countries, they're running central banks, ministries of finance, they're presidents, and they've changed their continent. And we think that we can replicate this in Africa. And finally, law and society. So economics and management is leaders for industry and government policy. Law and society, leadership for government, for civic society. It turns out that a lot of kids in high school who have an ambition to enter government look to political science and law as the paths to get there. And so we're going to meet that need. It is also the case that those countries that have strong rule of law are the ones that do the best economically and socially in terms of human rights, civil rights, and so on. And of course, all of this will be based on a liberal arts core, which is central to everything that we do. Engineering is the first thing that we're going to engage, and we're busily designing the curriculum and the buildings, the labs, and so on. I would like to invite you to join our community. Follow news from Ashesi, invest in Africa's future. And by the way, I think Google is doing an amazing job of investing in Africa's future. And, I see lots of companies that look at, that map that you have of a continent that is dark and say, oh, there's nothing there. And I talk to Googlers, and what I hear is, oh, it's not lit up, let's go light it up. I mean, that's fantastic. And I invite you to continue to do that. Visit us. I think that this is one of the most compelling projects in Africa. And your visit is actually super important for our students. What do I mean by that? In any organization, in any society, in any country, there is an understood performance horizon that people see. People have a performance horizon. And it is really important when somebody within that community pushes the envelope, pushes that horizon a little higher, and demonstrates to others that actually our performance horizon can be higher than it currently is. And I found that when our students engage with people like you all, who have an incredibly high performance horizon, it helps reset what they aim for in the future. And that's why I'm inviting you to visit. Be part of the solution. Come guest lecture. It could be a day, it could be a week, it could be a whole semester, everything in between. Serve as technical advisors. to help us with our own IT systems on campus, or to assist a student who's working on a project for his or her senior design project. These are all super important. And finally, please be an online advocate for e17af. Help spread the word. I think that it is very important in this world that when something good is happening in a corner, that we shine a light on it so others can see and follow. And so come join us. We'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
How did the other universities react when you set up e17af?
Well, when we first started, I think there was a lot of skepticism on different fronts. I mean, first of all, you know, I was 35 years old and I was going to start a university, and you know, just to give you some context, a 35-year-old in Ghana is considered a small boy. And so there were people, quote unquote, and so there were people who were just skeptical this young person was going to do this, and they didn't believe it could happen. There were people who, you know, the liberal arts approach is so different. The idea that a student applies to a college and is required to take a breadth of subjects before they specialize was new. And so there's some skepticism about that. But ultimately, we were allowed to proceed. And I think that there is today very widespread acknowledgement that the e17af experiment is delivering really good results. And so, you know, people are starting to take a much closer look at what we're doing and thinking through how they might replicate it as well.
I'm sorry. Hi, my name is Nikki, and I have a question that has to do, I guess, with corruption. Last January or so, I was at e17af before you made the new campus,
okay.
And I was listening to a presentation by the founders of Dream Mobile, and they're talking about, you know, all the great projects they've done with the Grameen Foundation, with nursing in the northern region, as well as all the different solutions that they created. But one of the issues that they kind of brought to light was that even though they have great products and they're able to execute well on it, there's always this, you know, cultural notion of bribes, especially when you're trying to secure certain government contracts and,
right.
and different things. And I know one of my friends recently moved back to start a company in Ghana, and we talked about the issues of, you know, giving bribes to get off the ground. And it seems like that's a larger cultural problem that even with great leadership, you have to have that across the board. And have you thought about that, or how are ways that you're looking at that in the community?
Right, okay. So that's a good question. I mean, we're in an environment where, particularly when you're dealing with government offices, there's this sort of endemic culture of people asking for bribes in order to let you do what you're doing, or for them to do their jobs. My response to that has been fairly simple. We just don't do it. And the thing is, you know, what I found is that, you know, when it really comes down to it, you can get things done without paying bribes. You might be slowed down a little bit, but when it becomes very clear to people that this is not going to happen, then they let you get on with it, okay? And for me, I think, you know, you all know about bucket lists, right? You know, there's a set of things that you want to do before you kick the bucket. Well, it's actually important to also have an anti-bucket list, right? The set of things that you're not going to do before you kick the bucket. And this is one of those things that's in my anti-bucket list. So, you know, so my view of it is, first of all, if you do it, then things get really messy, because then they've got you, and they'll never let you go. And if you don't do it, it sort of pushes you to, you know, first of all, work with those organizations and those institutions that don't do it, which is a much healthier way to be anyway. And apart from that, I think that you eventually will get things done, and you'll get it. My experience has been the people who have put pressure on me for this, I think after the fact, respect me more for the stance that we've taken at HESI. And this is what I encourage everybody to do.
As the organizer of the talk, I get to ask some questions too, which is, so at Google, we're a technology company, and when your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So looking at this, the first thing that's spinning through my head is, how can we throw technology at the solution? How can technology be thrown at the question of educating ethical, socially aware, liberal arts students? I'm sure you've thought a bit about that. Could we get you to spend a couple of minutes hypothesizing how technology could help you go one or two more steps along?
Okay. So first of all, let me just say that technology has already played a role in the work that we're doing. And I'll tell you different kinds of technology and the roles that they've played, right? So when Ghana first set off on this path for democracy, mobile phones and FM radio turned out to be extremely important for making sure that our elections were fair. Because people had mobile phones at the polling stations and they could call in and report if something was going wrong. Technology is being deployed in Ghana today with the voter registration to do biometric registration for voters. So now it's really difficult for people to do multiple registrations. And when they do, they get caught. So, technology can play a role to the extent that it enables things to be more transparent and hold people accountable. Okay. In terms of the particular role of how do you educate people to have integrity, that's a more difficult question, because I feel that for HESI anyway, it has required high touch. It has required many, many conversations in classrooms, outside the classroom, about, the age-old question of what the good society should be in our country. And you need to do that. But I also, 2 years ago, the accreditation board asked us to stop the honor system. It wasn't so much, they were concerned about the idea that students say they're going to be honest, but that they didn't believe that if we weren't proctoring exams, that students were not in fact cheating, okay? And so they asked us to stop it, and this resulted in a big, I got copied on hundreds of letters that our students wrote to the accreditation board. And I read every letter. It was, and we all, this thing hit the news. I was on television. Students were on radio and television talking about it. So this was technology broadcasting, an event that was happening in this small school in Accra. And then, of course, there was just this huge conversation that took off on Twitter and Facebook with students from other universities, questioning our students about whether this is real or not, right? So again, technology was a platform where, the intimate conversations that we had had on campus was now getting out into the broader community. I know that there's students, we did an ethics conference and there's students from other universities that came. There were some students from the University of Ghana that came to HESI and asked to have lunch with me to talk about this. And they heard about it because technology helped broadcast it. And so I think I see, technology as a basic infrastructure that helps us get the word out. And over time will facilitate sort of, conversation, two-way conversation as well.
Sorry, I had another question.
Okay, sure.
Another thing I noticed when I was back in Ghana at HESI was that the founders of Dream Mobile, as well as other entrepreneurs, had really great ideas and really innovative products, but getting VC funding internally in Ghana or getting the resources seemed very difficult. Either one, because they were too young, so they thought maybe it was some scam, or two, just because it wasn't as readily available. And so how does one look at the issue of bringing the resources with the talent together in Ghana versus, I guess, places like the Silicon Valley where it's just readily available?
Right. So that's a very good question. You know, Silicon Valley is an amazing place. And, venture capital has been an incredible factor in driving what is happening here. We don't have that in Ghana yet, but I am pretty optimistic that as we see more clearly what's happening in the rest of the world, there is a possibility for this to also come to Ghana. I think that it's been, it's very important that, Dream Oval is essentially sort of pushing the envelope, right? This performance horizon that I talked about. And if you came to Ghana 20 years ago, you wouldn't see a bunch of young people with as big an ambition as those guys have, right? To have a group of 24-year-olds say, we are going to implement mobile money and we're going to change the world for all these poor people who are unbanked, is not something that you would have seen. But you see that today because of the work that we're doing at Ashesi. And I think that as we see more of those kinds of attempts, that also will attract capital to support people like that. I really hope that we can have more of an incubation culture in Ghana and on the African continent. I mean, there are other institutions that are beginning to do this. There's an organization called Meltwater that is doing this in Ghana, and I hope that we'll see more of that in the years to come.
Hi. So, what I want to say? Yeah, you were talking about bringing, expanding the offering for things like electrical engineering.
Right.
And there are now online courses like those from MITx,
right,
which are making a foray into this. Can you make use of this? Will it help what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, our faculty look at MIT OpenCourseWare quite a bit. We have a relationship with those guys where we actually even get a local copy of it. So they take snapshots. So we actually have locally hosted OpenCourseWare on campus. And I can tell you that as we are designing the electrical engineering program, that's one of the sources that we've looked at to guide us.
Hi. With only a few % of the people who are of a suitable age to go to college going to college, I can see how a step in the quality of education and the ethics of education can make a real contribution to society. But in places like the US, where lots of people go to college and ethics is on the decline, what strategy can we adopt?
Okay, so look, I think that the United States and other advanced countries need to never forget the basics, okay? I think that there's some classical ideas that, sometimes as we pursue technology and advancement, we start to think that, Plato's Republic or allegory of the cave and things like this no longer apply. But there's some ideas that really are timeless, and I think that it's very important that, all institutions of learning pay attention to the idea that ethics is important and that civic engagement is important. I would also like to say that, there is a dark side in the world. And those guys, they have no qualms about indoctrinating people with bad ideas, okay? And the way to counter that is to make sure that we are sort of lighting up people's minds with the basic things, those timeless ideas. It's, venture capital, this whole model of financing young people and having patient capital, and putting money in a company without a lot of collateral or any collateral, that wouldn't work if there was no trust. You need a high trust environment for this whole phenomenon to be successful, right? So that's my view of it. Hi, Bridget.
How are you?
Good.
I had a few questions. One, given the kind of environment in Ghana in terms of employment, you mentioned that 100% of the students go and get employment. Curious about where that is. I know that a lot of the traditional companies, the telcos and the banks tend to dominate. And in that environment, two things. Do you think that they're able to make a change? Like, do you think that they are having an impact outside of themselves only because the hierarchical nature of the environment basically says you're small, you be quiet, this is how we kind of operate? The other side is compensation. So I know compensation varies incredibly drastically in Ghana. So understanding, do you see your students being rewarded more on the compensation side? Because I think that's going to be a big factor in keeping them local in the long term and not going to Nigeria.
Right. Okay, so those are very good questions. We see our students actually climbing up the corporate ladder wherever they go quite quickly, and I assume that increased compensation goes with that. So I think that resolves itself. I talk with chief executives in the country who have now decided that Ashesi is going to be a key place to hire from, particularly because they're engaged with succession planning and they're looking for people that they think can rise up into middle management and eventually into executive management. And they think Ashesi is a place that they can get those kinds of people. So that's encouraging. Those are very encouraging conversations for me to have. Your other question had to do with jobs, right? And again, I think, it comes down to the basics, right? If somebody is well-educated and is a problem solver and has an entrepreneurial mind, and you put that person even in a corporate structure, they will come up with new ideas, new ways for the organization to grow. And so, for example, when an Ashesi alum goes and works in a bank and goes to their manager and says, there's this whole population of people who are unbanked, and we need to be thinking of a strategy to reach those guys. And manages to convince management to pursue that. Now, that bank is growing, right? It's now expanding to look at, a market segment that it hadn't before, just because of this one person who had the idea. And as it enters into that segment, there'll be jobs that come with that. Recently, GE entered Ghana, and they hired from Ashesi to open up their Accra office. And now the company is working on multi-million-dollar deals in the country. I mean, that's going to generate more jobs in Ghana. And so, when I started this project, I said to myself, this is a long-term play. It's going to take a couple of decades, or maybe even 3 decades, for me to see the full impact of the work that we're doing. In the meantime, I'm just paying attention to what are the steps that we're taking and what are the little glimmers that we're on the right path. And I think that so far it looks promising.
Hello. I'm interested in knowing more about your students. What are the criteria to get into Ashesi? And what barriers do they face during their education that might prevent them from graduating and being successful in their college? And how does the college help them achieve that success?
Okay. So Ashesi's student body is very diverse. So we have students from poor rural villages or even urban slums. We have students from quite affluent families and everything in between. So it's very dispersed. Now, their academic background, as you might imagine, is different, right? So the kid who grew up in a rural village went to an under-resourced school, maybe went to a school, didn't even have a math teacher, is at a disadvantage. When we make admissions decisions, what we do is we look at a standardized national exam, and the accreditation board has minimum standards for admission. We certainly will not go below those standards. But more importantly, we look at the person, right? So we do interviews, students write essays. We try to really understand who this person is. And the idea is, the kid who's self-taught and got a C in math is often just as bright as a kid who went to a really good school and got an A in math, right? They just didn't have the resources. And, we need to give that person an opportunity, and we need to provide the resources to help that person. So, for example, having a learning lab where they can go and get extra help with math and English and things like that. Those things are very important to help people get through. Now, so that's part of the answer to the second part of your question. What are the things that prevent people from being successful in college? Interestingly, some of our students who struggle the most are from quite affluent backgrounds, and part of the reason they struggle when they're in college is because they just don't have that fire in their belly. The stakes are not as high, they're not as driven, and sometimes that's a problem. And so, that's something that we're grappling with. So you'll have a few students who will flunk out academically. There's some students who will be expelled for ethics violations. If they do it enough, there's always a second chance given to people, depending on the severity of the offense. But so we have a few people that fall into that category. It's something that we have to do to just make the point that, hey, this is who we are. And then there's a third group that's very difficult to deal with. When we give financial aid, and we give a significant amount of financial aid every year, but what we do is we commit all the financial aid dollars we have available upon entry. In fact, it's never enough, okay? And then after the fact, maybe a couple of years in, a student's family circumstances change, they can no longer afford the fees. There are a few students who drop out because their families are no longer able to afford the fees, and that's very difficult. But it is what it is. We need, one of the things that we're trying to do is to raise extra money, sort of emergency funding, and the executive team at Ashesi set up an executive emergency fund that we contribute to ourselves, and certain categories of students, if there's been a death in the family, a parent has died, or there's some other major incident like that, they can apply to that fund to get funding. But again, even that fund is limited, right? So those are the things that cause problems.
One last? Okay, so you talked about wanting to change a continent. Mm-hmm. So what are your ideas for making Ashesi scale?
The big scale question. Well, let me say that, first of all, when I started Ashesi, I had this idea that one day there would be like 10 Ashesis in Africa. And, franchise is not the right word because we're not for profit, but there'll be a family of schools around the continent that that have the same mission, that share the same ethos, that perhaps operate differently depending in terms of particular courses they offer, depending on where they are on the continent. And I was going to be the one to make it happen, okay? So then I got started, and believe me, it is really hard, okay? Where we are now is to say, okay, we've done the first phase of our project, the first 10 years, hugely successful in my view. And we're doing the second phase, which is about really identifying a few very high impact areas that if we do, will be transformative in Ghana. Just public, private, and then to say, well, we're going to invite students from all over the continent to experience this, and they'll go back to their countries and make change, right? And we have examples of this. We have, someone who went back to Liberia who's making a big difference. There's somebody who went back to Sierra Leone who's making a huge difference, and just sort of expanded that way. Now, once we've sort of built the model, then the question is, how do we take that and scale it? Okay? And it's dawned on me that the way to take it and scale it is I need to sort of build up my organization. We actually need focused minds on how do you take this and replicate it. And depending on funding levels and so on, we may or may not need other Patricks to execute this. And I think that the leadership is really important. Now, this one has been super difficult because funding was very scarce when we started. It required somebody who was absolutely dedicated and persistent and willing to go through a bunch of stuff. Those people are hard to find, right? And so if those projects need to go through that same pain, then we will need to find people in those countries that have that persistence and that dedication, and who are going to just sort of go through the pain to get it done. It's going to be crucial, and it's hard to find those guys. Now, if there's funding for it, then it may be different, but I haven't figured it all out yet. But it would be really cool if we could replicate a chassis. So that's why. The second answer is replicating the idea, right? So there is sort of replicating what we've done, and there is looking at other institutions that already exist, that already have infrastructure, that already have people, and say, is there a way that we can inject the Ashesi DNA, the Ashesi ethos into those institutions? And that also is going to require, sitting down and thinking about exactly how we do that. But those are the two ways that I think eventually we will look at the scale question. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening. If you have any feedback about this or any other episode, we'd love to hear from you. You can visit g.co/talks@google/podcast feedback to leave your comments. To discover more content like what you just heard, you can always find us online at youtube.com/talks@google, on our website, google.com/talks, or via our Twitter handle @talks@google. Talk soon.